All right, we're at the closing keynote, everyone. Thank you for hanging around. How was it? Well, we know what the closing keynote means. It means right after this, you're going to just go and just chill on that. I think we're going to do that too. So I'm going to keep it real short. And over to StephenMathezer. Thank you so much for being our closing keynote. Really appreciate it.
You bet. I think he was hoping I'd pack the room, but yeah, no. So thank you, everyone, for sticking around. We'll try to get you out of here in a reasonable amount of time, but I do have some stuff I want to talk about. And one thing I was going to bring up, this wasn't planned, but I was talking to Quinn earlier about getting presenters for B-Sides. And this year, I think, some 35 folks put their hands up to present. But it is still, I think, as any conference organizer will tell you, hard to get people to put their hands up. So I've said this to folks privately. I've never really stood up here and said it, so I may regret this, but it doesn't take much to come up here and talk. Come on, it's not that hard. I'm not, Anyways, so anyone thinking about doing this in the future, I'll put it out there. If you want a little help, a lot of help, someone to review slides, someone to co-present, whatever, look me up. I'll be happy to help you out because I think it's the best way to get out there and have fun, meet people, learn stuff. I teach. That's probably where I learn the most is by teaching. So just encourage every one of you to take the plunge and get up here and give it a shot. So I didn't really, we didn't put an introduction or description of this talk out there. The call for papers came out on a day when I was just, let's just say, grouchy. It'd been one of those days, and you'll see why, hopefully, as I go through this. But this talk totally came out of my mood that day, dealing with some challenges around other people troubleshooting, really. So I think this is a really important concept. It's quite overlooked. It's something I'll branch off into other areas. There's a lot of folks new to cybersecurity here. So hopefully this will give you some food for thought. And those of you that are troubleshooting experts, well, you can sit here and commiserate with me as I go through this and we talk it over. I'm just going to make my speaker notes a tiny bit bigger so that I can see them without squinting. And ooh, that's too big. There we go. All right. So our goal here is really, how do you solve problems faster? And as I mentioned, take me from the top picture to the bottom one, right? Like, there is nothing worse than listening to someone tell me all the ways they didn't solve a problem because they really maybe didn't approach it in the right way. Troubleshooting is not the easiest thing in the world. Some of it comes with experience. Some of it, honestly, probably requires a little thought, something we can maybe do a bit better job of teaching. And it really shouldn't be that hard. I want us to resolve things faster, make customers or customers, whoever those customers may be, happy, and most importantly, reduce stress on everyone involved. I don't know, I see problem solving, troubleshooting as something for a lot of people. You're either good at it or you're not, but there's a lot of things that we can do to help ourselves get better at it. And honestly, you got to be a little bit careful about being the person who fixes all the problems, but it is a great way to show your value, to get out there, to meet other people, to learn how things work and progress in your career as well. So this is a security conference. What does troubleshooting have to do with security? Well, where do people go? Who do they point fingers at, right? In a security role, if the network's not to blame, well, then who's next, right? It's either network or the firewall or security or whatever, right? It's one of those things. After all, when has it ever been the fault of the vendor or the application or the server or any of those kinds of things? That doesn't ever happen, does it? It is a similar skill set, I would argue, to incident response, threat hunting, forensics, all of those disciplines of cybersecurity. They're they use the same skills, the same capabilities as troubleshooting. You're basically solving problems, hunting for things, looking for anomalies. And of course, in an operational security role, you tend to have a pretty diverse knowledge and skill set. And I'll come back to this a little bit as well, how important that is. In security, we touch network and web and OS and endpoint and authentication and scripting and logging and just about everything else. We have lots of visibility, that's not a hard word. SIM, we can scan, we can look at network packets and logs and everything in between. And of course, we have the best toys, right? That is why you want to work in cybersecurity, because you have a budget, I think, maybe nowadays, and you get all of the best toys. And you meet friends and make relationships with all of those people that you are solving problems for and that you can get to help you solve problems. Because those, I kind of jest, but those relationships, especially in a security role, are really important for any number of reasons, especially when most often we're in the position where we know where the problem likely lies, or the incident or the issue or whatever, but we need someone else to do that thing to get us to where we're going. So those relationships are pretty important. And I would argue that troubleshooting is not really that hard, but there sure are ways to do it badly. And this is the commiseration part. You can let me know if you recognize any of these. And hopefully this doesn't trigger any PTSD or anything like that for any of you folks that have been around as long as I have. Strategy number 1, give up, hope it goes away, right? Let's just start with failure, right? This is too hard, I can't deal with this. Who hasn't been there, right? It's not really my problem. I'll just end up getting blamed. I've got better things to do, I'm busy. There are definitely days where I want to take this approach and give up and hope it goes away, but this isn't going to get anybody anywhere, right? And certainly not going to make friends and influence people. Closely related, there's several that are related here. Closely related to give up. Is we find someone else to figure it out. If I can't, just ignore it. And if I can't wait for someone else to do it, then I'm just gonna go and find somebody else to do it, because I really don't want to be. I don't want this stuff stuck to me, right? I don't want to have to deal with it. We can try to actively make it someone else's problem. One of the ones that will really, I could rant on for a while is this approach, right? Let's just try a whole bunch of random things and hope that whatever it is going on stops, and ideally we don't cause any other problems, right? There's many issues with this approach. First of all, there's my beautiful Venn diagram, right? There's what we throw, there's what sticks, and there's what works. So even all of that stuff that sticks, how do you know if that's actually working? There's a lot of things that might look like they've stuck, look like they've worked, but which of those things actually fixed it? What actually did the trick? And for that matter, how much mud do you have around to throw at the wall to see if it sticks, right? Like, how many ideas, how many different strategies are you going to try? I have definitely worked with folks who are so busy trying everything else that they never actually stop to think about what might work. I've had, someone come up to me trying to solve this problem. I've tried this and this and this and this and this, and it's still not working. Hey, have you thought about that? And now I'm going to go and try this and this and this and this, and maybe that'll get me closer. Hey, look over there. Have you tried that? And if that fails, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, come on. So there's no shame in trying multiple things to see what will work, but let's do this in a somewhat ordered fashion. And if it doesn't have a hope of working, then it better be real quick to try it, eliminate it, move on. Like, don't waste your time. Let's spend our time on the things that we think might work. And I think lastly, second lastly, there's, you know, oh, another good old standby, right? Oh, somebody else, you know, those previous 3 slides, somebody else must have fixed this somewhere along the way. Let's just go to the next version and hope for the best, right? What could go wrong? And yeah, hopefully, you know, because our vendors all have good track records, right? I upgrade, it's going to fix problems, not create any new problems, maybe. And then coming back to the security side, there's good old Swiss cheese. Let's just go with the permit any. Are you sure? Yeah, sure. Why not? So these are all of the approaches that I see way more than I would like to see. You know, some of you that have worked with me in the past have probably know what I'm talking about or who I'm talking about. But yeah, let's see if we can come up with something a little bit better here. But first, a quick tangent. I know, I'm an artist, trust me. But why is this such a challenge? My wife, yeah, tangent, is doing her PhD in education. And yeah, don't get me started. I can, you know, what's the word, you know, transitorily talk about all kinds of things to do with our curriculum and education and so on. We won't really go there. But as I said, I came up with this presentation in a fit of rage or pique or frustration or what it was in a moment, because I was working with someone who is basically stumbling around in the dark doing everything but solving the problem. So I was talking to my wife about this talk, and she's been doing a lot of research into how we teach kids to read, like little kindergarten, grade 1 kids to read. Spoiler, not everyone's the same. Not everyone learns the same. Not everyone approaches these problems the same. The example she's given me, and this boggles my mind. So we had, I don't know, when was it? How old's my daughter? When she was in elementary school, so maybe 8-10 years ago, we had discovery-based learning, right? Sit the kid down, expose them to stuff, and osmosis happens and they learn, right? Now the pendulum swung back the other way and we are teaching the basics. Nothing beats the basics. So much so that the example she told me is there are literally classrooms where they are not allowed to use any books, and again, like kindergarten, grade 1, they're not allowed to teach kids to read with any books that have any words that aren't pronounced the way they're written. So you know what? This is awesome for test scores. My kid can read anything as long as it is written, pronounced exactly the way it's written. Like the kids have mastered phonics. The scores are off the charts, but there's so much they need to do to cope in the real world. They have to be able to relate what they are reading to something, to an experience, to something they're familiar with, to a context, right? If we teach kids and we just tell them stuff and they have no idea why it's relevant, they're not going to learn anything. It's a bit of a tortured analogy, but the point I'm making here is foundational stuff absolutely matters. You have to know the foundation, but just learning a thing by rote is not going to get you anywhere. We need to come up with ways to enrich that, extend that, take it further. So we don't want to start with, and you'll understand where I'm going with this in a second. We don't want to start with, hey, I know everything about secure operating systems. I don't know, what's a network, what are packets, whatever, pick your thing. We need those foundational skills, and I think it's somewhat reversed in cybersecurity today. We need those foundational skills, but we also need those higher order skills like the problem solving. Some of you may find this hits a little close to home, so I'm sorry, but we have many 2-year technical programs. How much can you cover, like cybersecurity, how many vendors are there? I once put together a slide where I tried to list every separate discipline or kind of cybersecurity, like every product category. I was down to 8-point font and out of room on the slide, right? Like cybersecurity is a massive discipline or landscape. So in 2 years, what can you cover? Well, you can go about this deep and maybe, well, not even this wide, right? This wide. So we've got a lot of folks who, get just that surface level introduction to cybersecurity. And honestly, very little introduction to things like operating systems. That's the big one. How systems work, how they interact, how does a web server work? How do any of these things fit together? So then to solve this problem, they go and get their master's and they become experts in risk and compliance. And still, we don't have any practical, I don't want to say we don't have any useful skills because that's not true, but you get where I'm going, right? So we have bad security decisions that result from that lack of the practical and the business understanding, because don't get me started on the business context as well with security folks who've just gone to school and learned what is right and what is wrong. Give you a hint, in the real world, there ain't no right and wrong. And then we depend on the magical tooling, right? Who hasn't had a vendor or talked to a vendor who's got a tool that will solve all your problems, right? Yeah. And it's very hard to troubleshoot or solve some of these problems with the lack of foundation, right? So the reason I'm taking this tangent is I just want to get you thinking about what are you doing, especially the folks that are newer to cybersecurity. What are you doing to fill in those gaps, right? How are you, what are you doing to help yourself to further your learning in the areas that probably haven't been covered? Because like I said, you need a lot of knowledge from a lot of different places. And I often talk about imposter syndrome. It is very, very real. I was talking to a friend whose daughter is looking for a job and is convinced she can't do it. I'm like, there's a dirty little secret. The bar is low. It is very, very low. Your goal is to be about here, a couple inches above your audience. And the truth is, all of us folks standing up here, that's about where we are. The bar is here. We're just sliding right over here, and we look brilliant. At least I hope we look brilliant. I don't know. So some things to think about. You all know something that nobody else knows. Every single person does. And the person sitting next to you knows something that you can learn from, right? You should be taking every opportunity to learn, but recognize that you have some piece of knowledge, you've had some experience, especially in a field this broad, that you know something that they don't. So things, for those that are getting started, just want to get you thinking, security change is faster than just about anything else. That in this general area, that is to your advantage, because that means by tomorrow I'm going to be an idiot and you're going to know more than me, right? That's not too untrue. Definitely you need to understand the foundation. If as much as you may not want to do it, if you've got an opportunity to take an operating system internals course, jump at that opportunity. That is knowledge you will use for the rest of your career, just the way the underlying pieces go together. Learn how systems, networks, interfaces, applications work. Learn how to learn, of course, learn how to solve problems, and then apply that knowledge in a security context. I really, I will say the best additions to our team have been people that have other experience, 10 years of desktop support, server admin, whatever it is, coming from other places with some of that knowledge and that desire to learn security and build on top of that. So I think, those are really important skills to get somewhere along the way, somehow along the way. And that doesn't mean go and, spend your life in school doing that. I'm just saying get some exposure to some of these underlying concepts. So let's get this thing back on track. Troubleshooting is where we started. Some key tenets when it comes to troubleshooting. Simplify, yes, keep it simple. Compare. Everything in troubleshooting is some form, and incidentally, for those of you that have looked at fuzzing, fuzzing is just another way, well, that's actually more, sorry, fuzzing would be analogous to the picture of the mud against the fence. But the point is that you want to do something and do one thing, compare the result, see what happened, compare working with not working, right? Process of elimination. Eliminate, try some things, rule something out, do some things to intentionally rule something out, move on. Of course, validate whether you actually fixed the problem, get under the hood. Very rarely have I solved a problem just by interacting with an application. It's by digging in, looking at source code in some cases, looking at log files, looking at scripts, looking at what's going on in memory, anything, well, and of course my favorite, network packets, but we'll get there. You sometimes have to dig in a little bit, but know when to stop spinning your wheels. when we've got snow coming tonight, right? You know, when you've got that, you've dug that trench in the snow, spinning your wheels. Let's not get to that point. So being a bit more explicit, some approaches we have. I even laugh saying it. We can read the documentation. I'll talk about some of these as we go. You can search for help. You can ask for help, as I said. You can enable logging because it might not be there. Check your logs. Simplify, as I've talked about. There's some other approaches like changing your perspective or your approach. Sleeping on it is an option. That sometimes works wonders. Talking it through. Changing different device, different browser, different network, different location, different perspective, something like that, right? And of course, the process of elimination. We can start at one end, work our way to the other. We can start in the middle. The point is, don't randomly start here. Oh, no, that didn't work. Okay, no, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Like, we want to do this somewhat methodically. So I'll dig into a couple of these just to provide some more detail, I guess. Starting with everyone's favorite. The documentation. Documentation is awesome, right? It's easy to read, it's clear, it tells you exactly what you want to know. This is where I'll talk about searching in a second. Searching is also a skill because you're not reading that documentation from start to finish. You're searching for what you need in there. But honestly, some of the doc I've seen makes me not want to bother, and that's actually a bit of a problem because there are nuggets in there. Even if it doesn't directly say, when this happens, you need to do this, you get those little pieces of information that tell you how things work. You know, you get some insight into the assumptions that the creator made or what you might expect to see happen. So, you know, you do have to fight down that I don't want to bother kind of instinct. Not to say, though, that documentation is going to solve all your problems, but you can't fix something if you don't know how it's supposed to work. So understanding how it's supposed to work definitely does have value. And like I said, you might find some clues in there, right? Logging, boring, right? Who has time to sit through? Well, you know, once you've finished reading the manual, then you can go start reading the logs line by line, right? Obviously, we have system logs. They're there. They often provide some valuable clues. Application logs, though, they're valuable. Sometimes they're sitting there. You know, don't go read the documentation to see what logs there are. I mean, do that, but go hunting around because some of these apps leave stuff everywhere. You can find lots of clues as to what they're trying to do, what they're failing to do, and so on. Sometimes you need to enable the log, so do that. Turn on debugging, whatever, see what comes out. You might get some clues. We have external logs, firewalls, proxies, authentication services, whatever, client-side logs, server-side logs, web server logs. There's stuff all over the place. So don't restrict yourself, I guess, just to the thing that you're working on, and generate your own. I have JavaScript, Python, whatever it is. So go put some logging in there for yourself. I mean, do it with intent in the right place, but certainly there's you know, when all else fails, do it yourself, right? Bottom line, especially if you're dealing with apps, you know, the same apps consistently, is figure out how they work and how to enable the logging that you need. It's not necessarily glamorous, but a skill. It is a skill to be able to extract useful information from, you know, a few 100 gigs of logs, getting down, you know, I probably won't tell this story later, so I'll just briefly mention it now. I called a vendor and said, here is a 500 megabyte packet capture. Packet number 131,702 is your problem. Go fix it, right? Like the people who can go and get to that level and quickly pull the relevant information out of well, packet capture or out of a log or something like that, those are incredibly useful skills as well. I know, aren't we in the best, most glamorous industry? On the simplify side, it's on a slide, and on the simplify side, I mean, just simple things, right? Isolate, take components, isolate them from each other, test them each individually, focus on the basic functionality. You know, this is where the whole concept of pinging something came from, although don't just rely on that, right? Let's start with basic functionality and work up from there. And get one thing working at a time, back to the throwing stuff at the wall, whatever that stuff may be. Let's get one thing working at a time. The internet, that's the solution to everything. You know, how did people troubleshoot and solve problems before the internet? Like, I really don't know. First question, am I searching effectively? Another skill set, learning how to get the information you want out of a search engine. Because the answer is usually the I'm feeling lucky button is not, I mean, it's happened, but it's not going to get you where you need to go. You know, I started out by saying learn, but master Google Dorks, meaning if you don't know what that is, well, Google it. But how to make Google return useful results. I only care about this file extension. I only care about things on this site. I only care about things with this in the URL or this in the title or whatever. You can really eliminate a lot of the crap quickly that way. Speaking of Google, also Google cybersecurity search engines. I was reading a couple of posts recently this week on Twitter. Yes, let's take a moment to mourn for the end of Twitter. Google cybersecurity search engine. There are things, you know, for searching everything from file hashes to password hashes to I've lost the plot. I can't remember the rest, but there was a list of 20 different kinds of things that you can search for that are non-conventional, right? Like not just stuff on a website. Historical information. I can't tell you how many times I found those manuals at the vendor documentation on archive.org, right? Vendor knowledge bases, vendor communities, they tend to have, they're different. Vendor knowledge base is a very different thing from a community of people who work with a product. There tends to be a lot of knowledge there as well, but I'll talk a bit more about how you should, well, on the next slide, approach solving problems, but don't just say, oh, it's broken, call the vendor, they can help me, because trust me, when I say the bar is low, that's about where it starts, right? Yes, go to vendors. They do have people who are very good at the vendors. Anyone come in from the vendor hall? I wasn't paying attention. Anyways, they have very knowledgeable people, but don't just default to, hey, this is broken, help me fix it. You need to go with some information, try to solve the problem first, because I have support tickets that are months old, so it's better off for me I'm better off figuring it out first. And when we're talking about the internet, I often do searches to find the search terms that I need to search for to find my problem, right? Like zoom in, narrow in. So talking about asking for help, one of the golden rules, balance, right? If you come to me and ask for help on this, you've already tried and you tell me nothing, then I'm not helping you. Tell me what you've tried, what worked, what failed, what you've done, what's going on, and then I'll help you. So I call it the 30-minute rule. Spend half an hour obviously this has to be proportional to the size of the problem, but spend 30 minutes trying to solve it yourself. Then come to me and tell me what you tried, where you're stuck, and then we move on from there, right? So please ask for help. Don't sit there spinning your tires. Don't sit there bashing your head against the wall forever, but don't come to me without at least trying to do any of that, right? So that's one of the golden rules. The other one is to be prepared. Like I said, tell me what you've already tried, or I'll send you back to try again. And because not only does that help you, but it helps me focus what we're doing from this point on, how I'm going to help you, how I can validate what you've already tried. And please, whether this is someone who works with or for me, getting me to help with a problem, or whether this is a customer or whatever, don't tell me it doesn't work. That is the least possible piece of information. You wouldn't be here talking to me if it worked. So why doesn't it work? I want all the details. Now, let me guide you through those details. I also don't need my mother explaining to me exactly what she clicked on in the 10 steps to get here, and her theory that it's because, mice used to have cords, by the way, that the mice cord was actually tangled, and when she untangled the mice cord, the computer started to work better. Like, no, but seriously, I do want some of the details. Be prepared to still have work to do. Maybe I don't know the answer. Maybe I'll choose not to give you the answer. Maybe I'll give you some guidance. That might be all I've got. That might be this. Yeah, but I thought I'd go off and try this and this. No, try this. I'm saying it for a reason. Go and do this and see where that gets you, and then come back. If you're still stuck, tell me what happened when you did that, and we'll move on. It's red for a reason. You came to me to ask for help. Listen to what I am telling you. Don't just keep nattering on and saying, oh, yeah, great idea. Did you hear a word I said? So you came to me for help. Stop talking for a second, clearly something I'm not very good at, and use all of your energy to process and understand what I'm telling you. Having said all of that, again, coming back to imposter syndrome, I'm not going to be perfect. Believe me, I'm not going to be right every time. So do challenge me. Tell me why you think I'm crazy. Let's work through this, talk it through together, and go on. So I don't know. I have some feelings about this slide. Anyways, I mentioned perspective earlier. Taking a break, sleeping on it, it does work. Go walk the dog. Just take a notebook or a phone or something so that when you have that eureka moment out in the middle of the park, you actually remember it. I started writing this presentation in my head while walking the dog. And yeah, I finished it this morning, but that's a different story. But yeah, I had to run home and take some notes so that I knew what I was going to talk about. Talk it through, with a colleague, someone on your team, someone you work with. I've solved so many problems that way. Or teach it to somebody. Teach it to your kids. It doesn't really matter if they learn anything. Well, hopefully they do. But or just verbalize, right? Teach it to your pet, your imaginary friend, Casper. I don't care. Oh, Casper, I'm dating myself again. Anyways, talk it through. Explaining something makes it much easier. I don't know. It does something that, for me at least, and I'm like, I stop mid-sentence and go and just let me try that. Oh, no, okay, we'll keep talking. And change the setting. And when I mean the setting, I don't mean the use a different device, a different system, a different OS, a different browser, right? That is so much easier to do now than having to run around and find a piece of hardware that match each of those criteria. Now you've got VMs and stuff. Try a different ISP, a different network location, different network, a different office, different location, log in with different accounts, whatever it is. In all of this, let's go through process of elimination, right? Start at the beginning, work your way forward. Start at the end and work back. Start in the middle and work towards the problem. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Do something as a process of elimination. And this is a really quick example. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but this is, and I'm not saying be this explicit, but what you're doing should match pretty well with something like this. If I asked you to find the 7, I know it's right there, but let's just make this a really long list. What's one way to approach it? Well, let's start in the middle. Is it 5? Well, no, it's not 5. So is it bigger or